Here is something that almost nobody talks about, yet it affects nearly everything happening inside your body right now. There is an organ sitting quietly behind your stomach about the size of your hand that is making decisions about your energy, your digestion, your blood sugar, and your long-term survival every single second of the day. Most people have never given it a second thought, and that might be exactly why so many people over the age of 40 are experiencing fatigue they can't explain, digestion that feels off, blood sugar that swings without warning, and a creeping sense that something in their body just isn't working the way it used to. The organ responsible for all of this is the pancreas. And today, we are going to talk about it in a way you have probably never heard before. The reason this conversation matters so much is that the pancreas operates almost entirely in silence. Unlike your heart, which you can feel beating, or your lungs, which you can feel expanding, the pancreas gives you almost no direct signal when it is struggling. It just quietly works harder and harder until one day it cannot keep up anymore. By the time most people notice something is wrong, the damage has already been building for years, sometimes decades. That is the reality of pancreatic health, and it is something worth understanding deeply, not superficially. Let us start from the very beginning, because to truly understand why the pancreas matters, you need to understand what actually happens when you eat a meal. Most people believe that digestion is primarily a stomach job. The stomach churns, breaks things down, and sends nutrients into the bloodstream. That is the general understanding, and it is largely incomplete. The stomach is really only the beginning of the process, and for one specific category of food, protein, it does a meaningful portion of the work. But for everything else, for fats, for carbohydrates, for the complex molecules that make up the majority of what we eat every day, the real processing happens further down the line. And the organ most responsible for making that processing possible is the pancreas. When food leaves your stomach, it enters the first section of the small intestine, a curved passage called the duodenum. At this point, the food is still acidic, partially broken down, and not yet in a form your body can actually absorb. The duodenum is where the transformation begins. Two major players empty their contents into this space. The gallbladder, which releases bile to start breaking down long-chain fatty acids, and the pancreas, which releases a sophisticated cocktail of enzymes designed to finish what the stomach and gallbladder started. This is where digestion truly happens at its deepest level. The pancreas releases several enzymes into the duodenum, each with a specific job. Pancreatic lipase continues the breakdown of fats that bile has already started working on. Pancreatic amylase picks up where salivary amylase left off in the mouth, completing the digestion of starches and carbohydrates. And then there are enzymes called trypsin and chymotrypsin, which finalize the breakdown of proteins so they can be absorbed through the intestinal wall. Every major food group, fat, carbohydrate, protein, relies on the pancreas for its final usable form. Without these enzymes functioning properly, your body cannot absorb nutrients no matter how nutritious your food is. You could eat the healthiest diet imaginable and still end up malnourished if your pancreas is not doing its job. There is also something the pancreas does that most people never hear about. It releases bicarbonate into the duodenum. This is critically important because the food arriving from your stomach is highly acidic, and those digestive enzymes only work in a slightly alkaline or neutral environment. The bicarbonate acts as a buffer, neutralizing the acid and creating the precise chemical conditions the enzymes need to function. The pancreas is not just releasing enzymes, it is also engineering the environment those enzymes need to work in. That level of biological precision is remarkable, and it speaks to just how central this one organ is to the entire digestive process. Now here is where it gets even more interesting, because the pancreas is not just a digestive organ. It is simultaneously a hormonal organ, and these two functions happen in completely separate types of tissue within the same structure. The cells responsible for producing enzymes are called exocrine cells, and they make up the vast majority of the pancreatic tissue. But scattered throughout the pancreas like small islands are clusters of cells called the islets of Langerhans, and these cells produce the hormones that control your blood sugar. The two most important of these hormones are insulin and glucagon, and they work as a pair to keep your blood glucose levels within a very narrow, life-sustaining range. Insulin is released when blood sugar rises, which happens after you eat. It functions essentially as a key. It unlocks the doors of your cells so that glucose can enter and be used for energy. Without insulin, glucose circulates in the blood without being able to get into the cells that need it, which is the fundamental problem in diabetes. Glucagon works in the opposite direction. When blood sugar drops too low, glucagon signals the liver to release its stored glucose back into the bloodstream, bringing levels back up. These two hormones are constantly adjusting minute by minute in response to what you eat, how active you are, and even how stressed you feel. The pancreas is effectively running a continuous, real-time monitoring and response system for your body's energy supply. Understanding this balance makes it easier to understand why what you eat has such a profound impact on pancreatic health over time. When you eat foods that cause sharp, rapid spikes in blood sugar, primarily refined sugars and heavily processed carbohydrates, the pancreas has to respond with large, sudden releases of insulin to bring those levels back down. This is not a problem if it happens occasionally. The human body is designed to handle occasional variation. The problem arises when it happens repeatedly, every day, across years and decades. Each time the pancreas is forced to produce a massive insulin surge, it is working far harder than it was designed to work on a chronic basis. Over time, this repeated stress changes the way the body responds to insulin. This is how insulin resistance develops, and it is one of the most important and least understood processes in modern health. What happens is that the cells of the body, having been flooded with insulin again and again, begin to become less responsive to its signal. They effectively start ignoring the key. The pancreas senses that glucose is still too high in the blood, so it produces even more insulin to try to compensate. Blood sugar levels stay elevated, the pancreas works even harder, and the cells become even more resistant. It becomes a progressively worsening cycle, and all of it originates in the metabolic strain placed on the pancreas by years of dietary patterns that create chronic blood sugar instability. What makes this particularly difficult is that insulin resistance can develop slowly over many years without any obvious symptoms. People may feel vaguely tired, have difficulty losing weight, notice that they feel hungry again very shortly after eating, or experience energy crashes in the afternoon. But these symptoms are easy to attribute to other causes. The connection to pancreatic strain and insulin resistance often goes unrecognized until the problem has progressed significantly. By the time a formal diagnosis of prediabetes or type 2 diabetes appears, the underlying dysfunction has typically been building for a long time. The relationship between blood sugar swings and how you feel day to day is also more direct than most people realize. When you eat something high in refined sugar and your blood glucose spikes dramatically, your pancreas releases a large wave of insulin. That wave is often slightly more than what was needed, which means blood sugar drops below where it started, sometimes dropping faster than your body is comfortable with. This is what triggers that familiar feeling of sudden hunger, irritability, difficulty concentrating, or the overwhelming desire to eat something sweet again. It is not a lack of willpower. It is a physiological response to a blood sugar drop driven by an overworked pancreas. Understanding this loop changes the way you look at cravings entirely. There is another dimension to pancreatic health that deserves serious attention, and that is what happens when the pancreas becomes inflamed. Pancreatitis, which is inflammation of the pancreas, can occur in an acute form, sudden and severe, or in a chronic form that develops gradually over time. The most common causes are excessive alcohol consumption and the presence of gallstones that block the pancreatic duct, though other factors can also contribute. When the pancreas becomes inflamed, those digestive enzymes that are supposed to be released into the small intestine can become activated prematurely while still inside the pancreas itself. When enzymes designed to digest food begin digesting the organ that produces them, the consequences are painful and serious. Chronic pancreatitis, when it persists over time, can significantly impair the pancreas's ability to produce both enzymes and hormones. This is why people with pancreatic problems often face serious nutritional challenges. If the enzymes are not being produced in sufficient quantities, food passes through the digestive system without being properly broken down. Nutrients are not absorbed. Weight loss occurs not from lack of eating, but from inability to process what is eaten. This is a medically significant form of malnutrition that is directly tied to pancreatic function, and it illustrates clearly why the pancreas is so central to the body's ability to sustain itself. The foods and lifestyle choices that support pancreatic health are largely those that reduce the amount of work the pancreas has to do, while also providing the nutrients it needs to maintain its own cellular health. Vegetables, particularly leafy greens, broccoli, and bell peppers, provide antioxidants that help reduce inflammation and oxidative stress in pancreatic tissue. Berries are particularly valuable in this context because they contain compounds that have been shown to protect cells from the kind of damage caused by chronic inflammation. Avocados and olive oil provide healthy fats that are far easier for the pancreas and gallbladder to process than heavy saturated fats from red meat or full-fat dairy. Lean proteins from fish, poultry, legumes, and plant-based sources like tofu place significantly less digestive burden on the system than fatty cuts of red meat, which require substantial enzymatic effort to break down. Whole grains, legumes, and fiber-rich foods slow the release of sugar into the bloodstream, which means the pancreas does not have to produce those sharp, sudden insulin surges. The fiber essentially acts as a built-in buffer, moderating the blood sugar impact of carbohydrates and making the pancreas's job considerably more manageable over the course of a day. Hydration plays a role that is often underestimated. Water is essential for keeping digestive enzymes active and maintaining the fluid environment in which all of these biochemical processes occur. Herbal teas, particularly those with anti-inflammatory properties such as ginger and turmeric, provide additional support by helping to reduce the low-grade inflammation that can impair pancreatic function over time. Ginger also has a gentle stimulating effect on digestion more broadly, which can help the entire system move more smoothly and reduce the burden on any single organ. On the other side of the equation, there are dietary patterns that place significant stress on the pancreas and are worth examining honestly. High-fat fried foods require enormous amounts of lipase to process, and when consumed regularly, they keep the pancreas in a state of constant high-output demand. Trans fats, found in processed snack foods and many fast foods, are particularly problematic because they are difficult to process and also contribute to systemic inflammation that affects pancreatic tissue. Refined sugars and sugary drinks, including fruit juices that many people consider healthy, cause rapid blood sugar spikes that drive the insulin release cycle described earlier. The liquid form is actually particularly problematic because it enters the bloodstream even faster than solid food, creating sharper spikes with less opportunity for fiber or other nutrients to slow the process. Alcohol deserves specific attention because its relationship to the pancreas is direct and well established. Alcohol can trigger the premature activation of digestive enzymes within the pancreas, which is one of the primary pathways through which it causes pancreatitis. Even moderate alcohol consumption over long periods can contribute to gradual inflammation of the pancreatic tissue, and heavy consumption is one of the leading causes of both acute and chronic pancreatitis. This is not about judgment. It is simply about understanding the biology and making informed choices. Smoking is another factor that significantly increases the risk of both pancreatitis and pancreatic cancer through mechanisms that include increased oxidative stress in pancreatic tissue, impaired blood flow, and the direct toxic effects of compounds in cigarette smoke on cellular DNA. The pancreas does not have a simple way to signal that it is being damaged by smoking, which is part of what makes it a hidden risk that people often underestimate. Physical activity matters in ways that go beyond general fitness. Exercise increases the sensitivity of your cells to insulin, which means the pancreas can achieve the same blood sugar regulation effect with less insulin output. Even moderate, consistent activity, a walk after meals, for example, can meaningfully reduce the chronic burden on the pancreas by improving how effectively the body's cells respond to insulin signals. This is one of the most direct and evidence-supported lifestyle interventions for pancreatic health and metabolic function, and it requires no special equipment or intense training. Stress is a factor that is often overlooked in conversations about blood sugar and pancreatic health, but the connection is real and physiologically significant. When you experience stress, your body releases cortisol and adrenaline as part of the fight-or-flight response. One of the effects of these hormones is to raise blood sugar levels, because in a survival situation, your body wants maximum fuel available for immediate use. This is adaptive and useful in short-term emergencies. But when stress is chronic, the constant elevation of stress hormones creates a persistent pressure on blood sugar regulation that forces the pancreas to respond repeatedly, adding to the cumulative strain. There are also several herbs and plant compounds with a long history of traditional use and growing scientific interest when it comes to supporting digestive and pancreatic function. Gentian is one of the most potent bitter herbs known, and bitterness in plants serves a specific biological purpose. It stimulates the production of digestive juices throughout the entire gastrointestinal system, including pancreatic enzyme secretion. By activating these systems, gentian can help the whole digestive process run more efficiently, reducing the burden on the pancreas to compensate for poor upstream digestion. Dandelion, often dismissed as a garden weed, has a surprisingly rich nutritional and medicinal profile. It supports liver function and bile production, which directly assists in fat digestion and reduces the enzymatic load on the pancreas. It also contains antioxidants that may help protect pancreatic cells from oxidative damage. Some research has also pointed to potential blood sugar regulating effects, making it a multidimensional herb for overall metabolic support. Milk thistle, also known as St. Mary's thistle, is most widely known for its liver protective properties, but the active compound it contains, silymarin, is a powerful antioxidant and anti-inflammatory agent that may also benefit pancreatic tissue by reducing cellular damage and supporting the conditions for healthy insulin sensitivity. Turmeric, specifically its active compound curcumin, has been extensively studied for its anti-inflammatory properties. Chronic low-grade inflammation is increasingly understood to be a significant contributor to pancreatic dysfunction, and curcumin's ability to inhibit inflammatory pathways makes it a particularly interesting compound for pancreatic health support. It is worth noting that curcumin is absorbed significantly better when consumed with black pepper, which contains piperine, a compound that dramatically increases curcumin's bioavailability. Fennel and fennel seeds have traditionally been used to support digestive comfort and ease the movement of food through the digestive tract. Fenugreek seeds have shown promise in research related to blood sugar regulation and insulin sensitivity, with some studies suggesting they may help slow the absorption of carbohydrates and reduce post-meal blood sugar spikes. Burdock root has traditionally been valued for its detoxifying properties and its support of liver and digestive function, both of which have indirect but meaningful implications for pancreatic workload. For anyone dealing with existing pancreatic challenges, plant-derived digestive enzymes deserve particular attention. Papain, extracted from papaya, and bromelain, found in pineapple, are proteolytic enzymes, meaning they break down proteins. When the pancreas is unable to produce sufficient quantities of its own enzymes, these plant-based alternatives can help carry some of that burden, supporting digestion and reducing the risk of malnutrition that can accompany serious pancreatic conditions. They do not replace medical treatment, but as part of a thoughtful, supportive approach, they represent a meaningful option. What is worth stepping back and appreciating is the sheer complexity and elegance of what the pancreas does. It is simultaneously a digestive organ and a hormonal organ. It reads the chemical signals coming from your food, produces the exact enzymes needed, engineers the environment those enzymes need to work, monitors your blood sugar in real time, releases the right hormones at the right moments, and coordinates with the liver, the gallbladder, and the small intestine to ensure that the nutrients in your food actually become available to your cells. It does all of this continuously, without conscious instruction, with extraordinary precision. And in most people, it does this without complaint for decades. The trouble is that the conditions of modern life, diets heavy in processed food and refined sugar, sedentary patterns, chronic stress, alcohol, and smoking, place a kind of sustained, relentless pressure on this organ that it was not designed to handle indefinitely. The pancreas has a remarkable capacity to adapt and compensate, but that capacity has limits. And because the pancreas rarely sends clear warning signals when it is struggling, the damage often accumulates quietly, invisibly, until the system finally cannot keep up. This is ultimately a story about paying attention to what you cannot directly feel. Most of the most important things happening in your body are invisible to your conscious experience. You cannot feel your pancreatic enzymes working. You cannot feel insulin being released. You cannot feel the slow development of insulin resistance or the gradual loss of enzymatic capacity. What you can feel, eventually, is the downstream result: the fatigue, the digestive discomfort, the blood sugar instability, the weight that will not move, the energy that never quite returns. By then, the process has been underway for a long time. The most valuable shift that can come from understanding the pancreas is the recognition that your dietary and lifestyle choices are not abstract health decisions. They are direct inputs into a biological system that is either being supported or slowly worn down by those choices. The foods you eat either stabilize your blood sugar or destabilize it. They either support your digestive enzyme production or overwhelm it. They either reduce inflammation or contribute to it. Every meal is, in a quiet but real sense, a decision about your pancreatic health. There is something genuinely remarkable about the human body's resilience, the way it continues to function, adapt, and compensate even when placed under significant strain. But resilience is not the same as immunity. Understanding the pancreas, understanding how central it is to digestion, to blood sugar regulation, to your daily energy and long-term metabolic health, is the first step toward making choices that work with your body rather than against it. Not out of fear, not out of obligation, but out of a real appreciation for the complexity and precision of what is happening inside you silently, every single day, and a genuine desire to give it the conditions it needs to keep doing its extraordinary work.